Hi, everyone. Welcome. So great to have you all on for our first Spring Week of Action event. I will say that this call will be recorded, so just to be aware of that. And if at any point you want to leave or you need to take a break, you're welcome to do that, and we can always let you back in. We'll have it be up to you if you want to keep your camera on or off, but we do ask that you stay on mute. The chat room is open for everyone. So if you have questions, you can send them directly to me or to Tracy for our question and answer at the end. You also can feel free to be active in the chat. We want to hear what you think. We want to, hear who you are. So drop your name, your pronouns, where you're joining us from. And also, of course, a trigger warning that this is going to be a workshop on supporting survivors. So I will be pasting right here in our chat some resources just in case you do need them. Awesome. Okay, and so let me quickly introduce Silvia, who's going to be presenting today. So many of you probably already know Silvia, but Silvia is our Senior Director of Programs and Research here at It's On Us. She originally designed these core programs and trainings to have students do these trainings on their campus. So this would be a bit of a train the trainer situation. But Silvia's going to go beyond that as well. And we're going to do some really cool activities on self-care today. So it should be really wonderful. And with that, just to make it a little easier, we'll go straight over to Silvia, and I'm gonna, there you go. All right.
Hey everyone. Thank you, Maeve. This is Silvia coming to you from New Jersey today. Just to add to the chat, it's great to see everyone coming from all over the country. Welcome, as Maeve said, to our first workshop of our 2021 Spring Week of Action. Fully virtual all week. The webinar, as Maeve said, is being recorded and will be made available afterwards. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to chat Maeve or Tracy during this webinar, and then we're going to try to set some time aside at the end so that we can answer those questions. And if we don't, I'll provide my email at the end and you can just send them to me. And then just a quick note for anyone listening via phone without the visuals. I saw a couple of people joining. We are going to be sharing our screen. Maeve is going to be sharing the screen. So please feel free to check out the webinar recording afterwards to fill in any of the blanks. So today, and maybe we can go ahead and start sharing now. Amazing, thanks. So today we will be talking about our Survivor Support Train the Trainer workshop. We'll be giving a quick refresher on how to support survivors as we transition back into some on-campus learning around the country. And we are going to also do a very quick self-care activity, which I'm very excited about. And we are going to go over some of our existing projects and what we've done both during COVID and what we have planned. So next slide. So since this is the first presentation of the week, we thought that we would begin with the quick intro. For anyone who hasn't joined us before on any of these calls, It's On Us began in 2014 during the Obama-Biden White House as a recommendation from what was then the White House Task Force to Protect Students from Sexual Assault. So basically, student activists on campuses around the country activated and demanded for a change, and the campaign grew out of that need for change. So to date, we've had over 500,000 take the pledge, which says that we all have a responsibility to be a part of a violence-free culture on our campuses around the country. And we are now transitioning into more of a program which is basically the information that we've given our chapters when they came to us and said, okay, we've taken the pledge, we have all of these students, now what? So that's why we sort of transformed in the past couple of years into a program. All right, so as we begin our conversation on what we are and have been doing to support survivors, both in their healing and for all of us as we continue to do this prevention work, we wanted to go back a little bit and begin by saying that we hope that all of you are taking care of yourselves and each other as best you can. We, having come up on the 1 year of COVID recently in the US, I thought that it would be helpful to go through and show you what we're working on, but also remind you of your resilience and the resilience of so many students during this time. So the poll on the screen is actually from our first session during quarantine last year with Active Minds, which is an amazing partner of ours. And I wanted to show it today because I honestly don't know if my answer to this question would change if you were to ask it to me right now. And that's okay. So if the same is true for you, you are not alone in that, and that's totally fine. It's natural. Next slide. All right, so you've all seen this slide before. This was last year's vision for our programming. So we created over 30 resources last year, including our core training modules, for anyone to use, to make edits to make it their own, to use on campus, off campus. And those were survivor support, sexual assault awareness, and bystander education. And this year, we've added modules that spoke to the needs that we were hearing from students, and especially students during COVID. Next slide. All right, so this is a little bit sad, but I thought it was important to go back and note that at the beginning of COVID in February, we launched our tour, our national tour. We were going to go around the country to a bunch of different campuses with help from our partners at Tinder. And we started the tour. We got to our first tour, our second tour, and then COVID happened. So we weren't able to finish the tour. At that point, we had started developing our online dating violence module, and the timing sort of came up. So we were able to make a lot of edits that now if you go into that module, it speaks a lot to things that might be relatable during COVID, especially with the hikes in increased rates of online dating violence and just the use of online dating platforms. So that is one of the big modules that we launched this past year. Next one. So this has been a really exciting project. We have not officially launched this module yet because right now we are doing a quick pilot program of this module that we have 2 modules for YSL as part of their Abuse is Not Love campaign. And right now we're working to collect a group of students that can help us just review these training modules. So Maeve, if you could add, thank you. If anyone wants to sign up, please do. Our launch date for this is going to be in the mid to late summer so that it's ready for the fall. But that's definitely something to look out for. And if anyone wants to participate, you are more than welcome to. All right, and then we've also been working with our great partners at Lyft and Uber on a bunch of different things. I know a lot of you saw them as part of our summit last summer. They were able to join and talk to us a lot about what they were going through at the time and what they were doing to help anyone who was experiencing violence. They were helping, they did a couple of initiatives to help people who were experiencing domestic violence get to shelters without that added cost. And they also just recently launched what they're calling an industry sharing safety program. So we encourage you to check that out. This is the first of its kind. So we are going to watch and see how this happens, how it unfolds, but this is really exciting. And again, something that's brand new and just recently launched. All right. So we did want to go back a little bit and do some review of our survivor support webinar because we have been home for a whole year. So as schools are deciding to go back on campus, we wanted to do just a really quick refresher. So I'm gonna go through a couple of things really quickly, and then we are going to do our self-care activities, and we are going to break out into breakout rooms, which Maeve will help us do because I am not good at that. And we'll get to discuss a little bit of what we are doing to take care of ourselves and each other. All right, so the first thing I would like to do is go back and play our survivor support video that we created with our student, Carly, for this workshop. I think it's important to go back to this video and because it really just breaks things down. So let's go to the next slide, and Maeve, if you can play that video, that'd be great. Mute myself.
Dear sorority sister who needed a listening ear, your roommate called me and asked me to come to your dorm room. She told me of how you had stripped your bed of the bedding and thrown it in the dumpster, how you refused to sit up from the bare mattress and to speak to anyone. You laid there, curled up and crying. You needed someone who understood what you had gone through, someone who had been there before, someone who believed you. You needed someone to remind you that it wasn't your fault. Suddenly, reality truly set in. My sister had been sexually assaulted the night before, and she needed my support. He was a new boyfriend of yours, but he was different that night. You described to me what happened, the lack of consent, the intense and forceful nature that made you uncomfortable and scared, the feeling of needing to throw away your sheets, your bedding, the gifts and love notes he had given you. All that was left were the words you feared to leave your lips. Sexual assault. And then he looked at me and asked, how did you move on? How did you get out of bed each day? What is life like after this? I looked at you and I said what I wish someone had told me. First of all, I'm sorry this happened to you. No one should ever experience this. Second, I believe you. And I know you are telling me everything you can tell me right now. I promise to continue to listen if you continue to tell. Lastly, I love you. And you are strong. You will get through this. You have proven such strength to me, to our sisters, and most importantly to yourself. I'm grateful for your trust in me then, now, and in whatever capacity you may want in the future. I owe you support because I never want another sister to go through this ever again. Sincerely, Carly. It's on us to end sexual assault. Learn how to support a survivor at itsonus.org.
Amazing. Thank you, Maeve. Again, that video is on our YouTube channel for anyone to use for free at any time if they want to as part of your own survivor support webinars that you are hosting on campus if you go back, or if not, just virtually like we are doing today. So this was a quick slide that I thought that we could all go through and just post name and where you're from in the chat, but since we already did that, we can skip to the next one. Great, and then next slide. So just as as background for folks in this area, 90% of survivors do not report their assault. And history has shown that this is true. So according to RAINN, 995 out of 1,000 perpetrators of sexual violence will walk free on average. I will note that this is a statistic that was provided before COVID. So I can't say that that is not higher today than it was then. And the main reason that survivors do not report is that they fear that they will not be believed and that various authorities, especially legal and medical authorities, will be biased when they treat them. So not responding to crimes that are reported in a way that is helpful and safe for the victim can lead to increased violence on campuses as well as recidivism. So we definitely want to make sure to note that survivors of color, disabled survivors, undocumented survivors, and many other marginalized groups face even more obstacles to reporting and seeking services for their assaults. It's really important to note as we develop our programming to ensure that we are never leaving anyone out of the conversation. All right, so a familiar slide. So survivor support is the specific response provided to survivors by their community. That is what we mean when we host our survivor supports webinars and when we provide information for the Train the Trainer workshops. The community can include peers, the administration, and anyone else in survivor groups. So just real quick, we are going to discuss how to support friends, especially as we are going to be seeing some of our friends, hopefully, fingers crossed, for the first time in a while. So how one reacts when someone discloses to them is important because people do not report very often. And because that first interaction can really decide if they're going to tell their story again to anyone. So we are going to provide some helpful tips on ways to respond if you do want to support a friend. All right, so here are some recommendations of ways to respond to a disclosure. This information is also on our website under resources as its own two-pager if anyone needs it. Again, these are just recommendations for when you're in a situation when someone discloses to you. This is not to say that you are in any way responsible for responding to survivors. This is that's the role of trained advocates. But these are some things that you can say to a friend or a peer if they open up to you. You can say, I believe you. You can ask them what they need. Listen so that you can understand where to direct them, but not feel obligated to listen to details if you're uncomfortable or you're feeling triggered, etc. Ask them if they need immediate medical attention and if they would like you to call the police or your local rape crisis center. And if they're not in immediate danger, there are options that you can choose from to get medical assistance as well. And it is important to say that you are not alone. There are other survivors in your community as well, and I support you and whatever your decision is. All right, and then next slide. This one's important. It can be helpful to try not to ask questions, especially why questions. Some examples are here. Why didn't you tell them to stop? What were you wearing? How much were you drinking? Etc. It's often better to listen and not to ask these questions because as we have through our conversations about trauma and what we know, we have to be aware that survivors may not remember things in a chronological order, and if they don't, that's okay, and it doesn't mean they're not telling the truth. So just a quick refresher there. And then next slide. So we do, sorry, can you go, oh, there we go. We did also want to add for anyone who is going back to campus and might be a mandated or mandatory reporter that a mandated reporter is an institutional policy or a state statute that requires all or nearly all employees to report harassment and assaults to campus authorities, to law enforcement, or to your Title IX officials. So this varies by school. If you are confused about whether you are or are not a mandated reporter, this is something that you can ask your school about. You know, it's really normal to be confused at this point, especially with everything going on with Title IX. So feel free to ask your Title IX office or to ask any campus authorities that might be able to direct you into the right place. And then we are going to continue to our self-care activity. So again, since we were talking about how to support survivors and like as we're going back to campus, some of the things that we might be going through and how to provide this programming for survivors and for others in the community, we thought it was really important to go back and just say like, hey, how's everyone else doing? How's everyone on this call? And make sure that we're all providing ourselves and each other with some self-care. So, and yes, this is true. It's important to talk about self-care because you will be better equipped to support each other if you are not, sorry, you will be better equipped to support each other if you are taking care of yourself. Vicarious trauma is very real. And next slide. So just real quick, what is self-care? It's something that you can do for yourself, and it can look very different for everyone. Next slide. Here are some examples of the ways that two of our formal regional advisors were taking care of themselves when they were on campus. I think it's really important and helpful to share these examples. So if anyone wants to read through them, feel free. These are some really good examples of things that Alma did that made Alma feel better and that Carly did to make Carly feel better. All right. I did for this presentation go back, and as I was looking at our programming from a year ago, I also looked at what I was doing for self-care a year ago, because we were at that place where we thought, okay, we're only going to be in quarantine for a couple days. Okay, maybe it's just a week or two. I'm just going to work from home for a little bit. And so I have these photos of things that I thought I might do once or twice to keep my to keep my thoughts in line, but I ended up having to do pretty much every day in quarantine, or at least as often as I could, to sort of refresh my brain. So here are some cute photos of my dog Collin and some of the activities we did. We were in DC, so it was actually, the weather was decent, so we would go for a lot of hikes in Rock Creek Park. We also worked to create a schedule so that I would break up my day, right? Like if I'm working 2 feet away from where I sleep, I want to make sure that I'm breaking it up and creating a schedule for myself. Maybe putting real clothes on, Also, maybe not if that's not what you need, but I definitely needed that. So I created this schedule of it just made me feel better to get up, get coffee, and then rather than going back to my desk in my room, I would go to the kitchen and I would just work from there, get some natural light. And that was really helpful for me. And then, of course, as everyone did, we did some at-home yoga together. We were not good at it. We still are not good at it, but it's helpful for for my mental health. So, and then this last one is very real, napping. I had my relationship with napping before was really not that great, and I didn't know. I thought that it was like I would wake up sometimes feeling like I could have been more productive. But napping for me, at least in the past year or so, has been very helpful. So whenever my brain feels just overwhelmed, whether it's with information of stuff happening in my workplace or just in the world generally, sometimes it helps to take just a power nap. And even better if you have a fluffy being with you to cuddle with. So that brings us to our activity. So now we're just going to go over a couple of tips to develop a routine and to sort of like develop this self-care routine and make sure that you are holding yourself accountable for getting your self-care in whenever you need it. These are just a couple of tips to help anyone attempting to create a self-care activity. Again, they can be very different, and it's really just whatever you need to recover. It can range from like making a list and being very productive to just, again, sitting or maybe taking a nap. All right. So now we're going to break up into breakout rooms. Maeve is going to help us. Maeve, I think based on the amount of people we have, we could do maybe groups of 4 or 6. And we are going to, if everyone can just start, take a minute to just jot down a list of things that you do for self-care. And then we're going to talk about ways that we practice self-care in the breakout rooms. So Maeve, if you could break folks up now, that would be great. Again, all you're doing is sharing how you practice self-care and hopefully inspiring each other to practice more self-care. Hey everyone, welcome back. Hope you were able to have some really good conversations. I know we had a lot of breakout rooms, so we probably can't get through everyone, but does anyone want to either in the chat or come off mute and tell us a little bit about some helpful self-care that they talked about, anything that might be helpful to others?
I can share something. In our group, one of the group members, Jeff, posed the question around benefits of self-care and noticeable benefits. And I thought that that was a really important thing to point out, that, you know, self-care isn't just this lofty practice, but to actually be able to pinpoint throughout the day, you know, the progress made in our mood or the tension in our bodies, or being able to identify what the immediate benefits and then maybe proximate benefits of self-care can actually look like or feel like.
Thank you. That's super helpful. We also got Michelle in the chat saying that group 4 talked about music endeavors, trying to self-teach, learning a new instrument. And does anyone else want to share out loud? I myself picked the flute back up during quarantine. Group 6 talked about hiking and pet therapy. Very relatable. Does anyone have questions about self-care or need advice on maybe something new to try for self-care? Group 5 talked about mindfulness. Feel free to unmute.
I think we were in group 2 where we were talking about, I mentioned how it was difficult for me to start coloring because it was too stressful to start off with. And journaling. And I think that what I got from my team members was that you can really make it about anything that you want. It doesn't have to be daunting. Starting and then making it your own. Probably the best way to keep it functional in your life.
Right, exactly. It's about realizing what our own limits are and what actually makes us feel more relaxed, and how often we should make time for that too. Edward in the chat says group 5 talked about mindfulness. Farah bought a diffuser, very cool, and has been experimenting with different combos of essential oils. That sounds really amazing. I used to go to, before COVID times, I would go to heated, what is it called? Hot yoga. And they always had the spearmint scented essential oils at the end. And that was always my favorite part because it was so relaxing. So I fully support that, and that's really amazing. So yeah, so this is, you know, we just wanted to go over this to share, to have you start making these lists and make sure that you are prioritizing these things. Maeve, can you go to the next slide? So whether you made a physical list or one in your head, make sure to build on it, and you can take from some of these really great things that folks shared in the chat and out loud, but you can also just do what feels right for you and what you really need, and make time for that, whether it's each week, once a month, whatever you need. Once a day, go for a walk around the block. And again, this should be a priority. You want to incorporate this so that you don't reach your emotional or physical mental health limits. And then, so as I was going through looking at programming from this past year and what we've accomplished and done, I found some of the early self-care that folks were doing when they were quarantining, and I couldn't help myself but to share these. So I want to go ahead and share two of my favorite ones. Maeve, if you can play. Thanks, Maeve. And so that leads us to the end of our workshop for today. I hope that this was something that was helpful and fun, and helped everyone relax a little bit as we go into a really amazing Spring Week of Action week. And we wanted to open it up, since we have a couple minutes left, to ask if anyone wants to share something, feedback that they have about any of our webinars, any questions that you have, anything that you would like to see us participate in or create or host, anything that's programming related. We want to just open it up. We are always looking for feedback and for new ideas. So we just wanted to open it up for a couple minutes. You can either unmute yourself and just ask it out loud, or you can ask in the chat, or you can ask Tracy or Maeve individually if that's what you feel more comfortable with. So just gonna open it up now. Okay, well, if no one has questions, we will just say thank you. Oh. Let's see. Mentioned online dating abuse is on the rise. Can you share your source? Thank you. Yes, absolutely. All of our online dating statistics are referenced on our online dating training module. Maeve, if you could post the link to our training resource page, that would be amazing. And thank you, Tracy, for sharing our link tree with all the links to join this week for the Spring Week of Action, and to sign up and register or re-register your chapters. And then Maeve just pasted the resources in the chat that should all have the citations. I will note that for some of the presentations that we have, it is not linked. The resource is mentioned but not linked on the slide, so look in the presenter notes and the link should be there. All right, any other questions? right. Well, thank you all so much. We really appreciate you making time for this. We hope this was helpful and that you are able to take your list, whether it's a real list or just in your head, of self-care activities and prioritize that, because it really does matter. Sending you all a lot of love, and see you tomorrow.